A good trick to do before the corners are put on and before the windows are in is to snap all the lines for the siding. In this case, we're using a 7-inch clapboard siding, and we're going to go with a 5 3/4 inch exposure. We want to try to get about a 1/4 inch down past the bottom of the building. So if I hold my piece here, we're about a 1/4 inch down, and we make a mark, and then from that point, we'll go 5 3/4. And we'll end up with a 5 3/4 inch exposure. And that leaves us with a really nice finish. Now the tricky thing is we have the wheel wells and the fenders and some obstacles to deal with. So what I'll do in this case is I'll measure from the top. I'll come down and get my dimension, and then I'll do that on all 4 corners of the building so we can snap lines around the entire perimeter before the corner's on and before the windows are in. It makes it much easier. You don't need to measure between each of the windows and around the corners. Okay, so now we're going to talk about corners. Obviously you'll notice that we have what's called a rubber flashing. In this particular one, it's called a Fortiflash. And what it is, this is a 9-inch, it's 9 inches in width. And it has this film on the back. Now the reason for this flashing is if you install your the 2x of the corner trim, and you would do it without the flashing, when the siding butts up to it, you have an area for the water to get in between the piece of siding and the corner trim. Now, the beauty of the rubber flashing is if you have it here and your siding butts up to it, if any water gets in behind here, it'll run down and the rubber will protect the plywood of the wall. And what we did with this particular corner is first we cut a bevel onto it, and instead of doing a true 45, we went a little bit past as a 46. So when it comes together, your outside corner comes together really, really tight. And there may be a little bit of a gap in the back, but that's okay. So we have the 2 pieces come together. The easiest way to figure the corners out. On this one, I'll do this one first, cut the 45 angle, and that'll come up right snug up into the roof sheeting. The second piece is a little trickier cut. What I did on this one, the first thing I did is I cut it on a 45 bevel, and then you can hold the piece out past the rafter. You already have your bevel on where you're snug up against the roof sheeting, and you can make a mark on the side. And in this case, I cut 1.5 inches out for the rafter, and also made my cut here as well, and this will snug up underneath the rafter. So we have our 2 pieces, they come together nicely. We know that they fit now. It's much easier to do all the cutting on the top. Hold the piece in place. Now this is the line for our first piece of siding. So I'm going to make a little mark here. And with our siding being, this particular case of siding is 7 1/4 inches wide, we want to be down past the siding just a little bit for some character. So from this mark, I'm going to add 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go 7 1/2 inches, and then my corner trim will be down past the siding, about 1/4 inch. Just a nice clean touch. Okay, now that we have the glue in, I'm going to go ahead and use a 2 1/4 inch stainless steel screw. And again, the importance is to use a stainless steel screw here. And I'll put my screws in approximately every 16 inches. Alright, so this is one of the tricks that Pop has taught us. If you take a little piece of conduit and you just smooth the edge down, and then also take a piece of sandpaper over that, makes a very nice corner. There's no sharp edges, no splintering. Okay, so now the fun part, installing the corner. So with everything cut, put it up into place, and then I'd recommend to fasten the corner about every 16 inch on center.
The gentlemen at the shed yard have made the decision to hire out for the spray and installation. They'll be using a polyurethane spray, and they will be hiring a separate contractor to come in and do that. Therefore, as you see them installing the siding, you'll notice that the Tyvek is not actually on the exterior of this particular model.
Okay, I'm going to show you a trick to go around this wheel well with the siding. What I did is I took the same piece of plywood that we had when we did the wall sheeting, and I put it on here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark where each chalk line is. And this is where the siding goes. Do one there, do one there, and I did it on both sides. And I lay this down. And I measured on this side, and I just went long. I went 40 inches right here where this chalk line is, and that's what this piece is. 40 inches long. I did the same thing on this side. I went a little bit long, and I laid both of them down. Now we're gonna lay this plywood on top. And right here where my mark is, and the top of my siding, I'm gonna set that right on that mark. Same with this side. Now I'm gonna go ahead and trace this. And the same thing on this side. Set it right on that mark. Trace it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out. And I'm gonna fit it on here to make sure it fits properly. And if it does, then I'm gonna come over here and I'll mark this in. Now that I have this first piece cut out, I held it here as you can see, and I traced that. So it is cut to length, but before I install that, I'm gonna take this little lath here. It's about a 1/4 inch thick by approximately 1.5 inches. What I'm gonna do with that is I install it flush with the bottom of the sheeting, and I nail it and glue it all the way along here. What that does is my plywood or my siding goes in against that, and it keeps it from flopping when you're going down the road. Another thing that I'm gonna do, take some silicone, I'm gonna caulk all the way along here, a big bead all the way along this wheel well. That way when I put my siding on, I smash it in against that silicone, and that's what seals all of this in behind the siding, so you never see any of the sealing. So now that I'm ready to cut the second piece up, what I did is I measured from the very end to this point right here. And on this long piece of siding, I do the same thing, and I make a mark, which was 1/12 in this case. After I did my mark, I get this piece of plywood. As you can see, I have my siding marks here. This was my first piece, now this is my second piece. This point right here, I put right on my mark. Put both ends right with the top of my siding and the mark. And now I'm ready to trace all the way around for the jigsaw. Whenever you have a splice on your wall, it's very important that you put a piece of flashing in behind the splice. The reason for that is any water that gets in the splice would go in and back behind your siding and would rot and mold. If you put the flashing on, go down approximately 1 inch and go up 2 to 3 inches. That way any water that gets in the splice, it runs down and out over the siding. Here you can see I have the finished product. Now any water that gets in there goes down over the siding. Okay, 2 very important things to remember when you're hanging siding with water and waterproofing. First of all, remember we left this loose when we were hanging our windows. Now you see it's a little bit short. What I want to do is I want to hang it out over the siding a little bit. Now since it's a little short because it was only a 4-inch piece, I cut another piece the same length, and I'm going to slip this in underneath here, and then I'll hang it out over the siding approximately 1 inch. That way any water that comes in on the sides here, it runs down and runs out over the siding instead of in behind the siding.
One of the best parts about building your own house is that you get to make decisions on the fly. They might be small decisions, but they can save you a lot of time and material. So Alan, I know you were at a point where you made a decision to slightly change the way this build goes in order to save some time and material.
Yes.
So what did you do?
What we did, there's a few options, and take your siding all the way up to your plywood. And one option is to notch in between every rafter.
Seems like a lot of notching.
That's a lot of notching, a lot of cutting. So what we came up with to save a lot of time and material. We actually used a good bit of scrap material for this last piece. We ripped this last piece of siding at 2 inches, pushed it all the way up against the rafter. And then what I did is I put little blocks up inside here to pack it out even with this. Right now you have, it's all nice and even. And then I cut 4 15/16 1x6, cut it to go in between, and that gives you a nice finish. And once your faceboard is on, you look it underneath there, you don't see any gaps and any unwanted obstacles. Now that I have this siding run all the way up, we're ready to put on the rake board. So I'm going to teach you how to keep this rake board from twisting and warping. Right now there's nothing to fasten it to. As you can see, I have no blocks or anything here. Up here in the peak, I measured down 3.5 right there, and I measured down 3.5 this way, and I determined where this corner is going to be at 3.5 inches. And then right here, I came back 3/4 inch because that's the width of my rake board that I'm using. And I did the same thing here. Then I measured out the 3/4 inch, which in this case was 3 7/8. And I cut 2 blocks, 2x4 blocks at 3 7/8. And I'm going to install those, and I'm going to put them up against the plywood, just like that. And this corner is going to be right here where I made those 2 3.5 inch marks. And this block is going to go on this side. And then just bring them up till your 2 corners meet, just like that. After you install the 2 top blocks, you need to figure out where your bottom is going to be. So what I did is I snapped a line here, and the way I determined that is I measured right here where this block is, which is the 3 15/16. I came down and came to the exact same position right here, 3 15/16. I made a mark, and I snapped a line. I have a blue line underneath here. That way when I put my rake board on, I know exactly where I'm going. So then I cut another 2x4 block, because I need another one in the center, and that one is going to go right on that chalk line, just like that. I'm right on the line, and I'm in against here. So now that we have 2 blocks installed, I put a 45-degree angle on the top, and the bottom, I just left it long. I went about 1 foot longer than my rafter was. That way when I do my fascia, I'll measure and cut that once I'm down there. That way I have it nice and accurate. I'm going to put this on here, just like that. And that goes up against. Now that I have my chalk line in underneath, I can see exactly where it goes. I'm going to put a bead of glue all the way down through. I'm going to put 2 screws into here, and then screw down through the roof into the rake board.
Remember that whether you choose to finish your house in cedar, board and batten, vinyl, or some other product, that is an integral part of your house and will protect you from rain and other elements. If you have any questions that haven't been answered by this video, please contact us at tumbleweedhouses.com. What the exterior of your house looks like is a very personal design choice. For example, Tumbleweed has chosen to do most of our houses with a bevel siding. It used to be called clapboard siding. You'll notice when you purchase this from the store that it has a bevel. It's actually fatter at one end and thinner at the other. And this is so that it can be installed where the next piece would come over, and it would create a very nice bevel, and it would actually direct your water downward off of your house. That's the purpose of most different types of siding. Some other options that are available to you would be a lap siding. A lap siding is also a hardwood product, and it will be routed on either end so that it is perfectly flat, and one piece will fit very nicely over the top of the next one. Another option is to use vinyl siding. Vinyl siding is very commonplace in America today. It is actually a plastic product, and you can find it in both color body and applied color methods. Vinyl siding comes in a variety of profiles. You might find a double Dutch variety or a 4-inch overlap variety. When these are installed, they're going to look like their wood cousins, which is what they're mimicking. However, it's a low maintenance product and it's very easy to install. Just like most other types of siding, it's meant to shed the water away from your house. One thing to note about vinyl siding: keep in mind that occasionally you might want to move your tiny house to a different location, and you might experience some trouble when you're taking your house down the road with the vinyl, just because of the composition and the type of material and the way it's installed. So please be careful with whether you choose to install vinyl siding, and be prepared to perhaps make some fixes when you get to your destination. Another choice to consider for your siding is board and batten siding. Board and batten is a look that is achieved with a large sheet of material, and then there are trim pieces that are applied to the outside. The trim pieces cover the joints between your 4-foot by 8-foot sheets of material. Additionally, you can install more trim pieces to cut that 4-foot panel in half, giving the appearance that you're actually using 2-foot strips of material. It's a very nice look, and it can be painted any different color that you choose. Keep in mind when you're choosing the siding for your tiny house that it is an aesthetic choice, and there are many options available to you. Keep in mind how it's going to travel as you move it down the road and what it's going to look like from the outside.